Okay, have you ever taken one of those internet quizzes about whether or not you're an alcoholic? No, me neither. But I hear they ask questions like, have you wanted to cut back on alcohol, but you've been unsuccessful? Do you have powerful urges to consume alcohol? Has your use of alcohol negatively impacted your work? Have you repeatedly used alcohol when it's hazardous to do so, like when driving a car or operating machinery? And maybe some of these questions you answer yes or no. And depending on that, you leave the quiz feeling more or less reassured. My next guest would probably say that these are the wrong questions to ask. Ruari Fairbairns was a successful oil broker living in London and at the peak of his career, which, as he tells us, had a lot to do with getting absolutely pissed with his colleagues and clients. When he took a break from alcohol, he saw his life totally change. And motivated by all these dramatic improvements, he started the organization 1 Year No Beer. He has since won the Great British Entrepreneur of the Year Award and the Economic Innovator of the Year Award. And he's helped over 100,000 people reassess their relationship with alcohol. Now, notice I didn't say get sober and stay sober. Instead of those internet alcoholic quizzes, I think Ruari would say that the better question to ask yourself is, how awesome do I want my life to be? And if you're someone like me who wants their one and only life on this planet to be filled with maximum fucking awesomeness, you are going to want to hear what Ruari has to say.
It's time to get your head out of your ass and start creating a life of no regrets. Whether you want to lose weight, get rich, or manifest a hot threesome on the beach, you're gonna want to turn this up. This is Goals, Grit, and some woo-woo shit with your host, best-selling author and professional butt kicker, Oognah Duncan.
Ruari, thank you so much for being here. I am super excited to talk to you.
Amazing to be here, Oognah. Thank you.
Yeah. So can you start by sharing a little bit about your personal journey and what led you to found 1 Year No Beer?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So, to whistle you back into a little bit of life story, I was an oil broker in London, which is a great job, great fun, lots of entertaining, wining and dining. In fact, I would say I was a professional at taking people out and getting them smashed. And the more I did that, the more successful I was, the more money I made. So it was a great job for an ADHDer who likes to party hard. And, I think much like many, many people in those roles, or certainly in the city of London, or probably cities all over the world, it was just endemic. It was just drinking was endemic. And I think, on that journey, I started to grow up a little bit. I met my now wife and things started to move forwards. And I had this sort of scratching in the back of my head, it starts off with a really quiet noise. And I know you probably resonate with this, Oognah, that it's like a little whispering voice that goes, hey, I think alcohol is holding you back, right? And you go, what? Shut up. It's not. It's a go away voice. And you go, no, it's great. It's the best thing ever. I love it. It brings me happiness and joy and success and women and all of those things. And then it just kind of starts niggling and niggling and niggling. And I remember the day where I kind of brought this up to my colleagues who I was working with. And I was like, I'm thinking about drinking less alcohol. And they were like, what? What are you talking about? Don't be ridiculous. Alcohol. Here, have a pint. And I was like, okay, I'll quick drink that. So then I was like, well, I can't talk to other people about it. Meanwhile, things were continuing on and this little voice of scratching. Now, what was going on at the time was I could wake up hangover again, and that could be a weekday. It could be a weekend. And I was feeling low, and I had all these other things that I didn't really associate with alcohol until later. But what happened was I met this wonderful thing called Headspace back in 2013. And I started meditating on the train to and from work. And that meditation is an amazing tool for awareness, right? It builds a gap between stimulus and response. And for me, stimulus was, I'm super stressed. And response was always, I need a drink. So as that gap built, I was like, do I? And is it causing you more trouble than I realize? Eventually, I approached my boss and I said, hey, I'm thinking about taking a break from alcohol. And he said, you are committing commercial suicide if you stop drinking. And I was like, whoa, okay. I've just spent the last decade building up a very successful business in the oil brokerage world, in the finance industry. I was pretty determined on being the number one in the organization, at the world's largest organization. And here I was thinking about destroying all of that with a simple thing of thinking about not drinking. So that was huge pressure to carry on. It took me another 6 months. And then eventually I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to see what happens. And I did. I took a break and I couldn't believe it. I mean, just fitter, faster, healthier, happier, better dad, better husband, grew my business. And so that's kind of when I said, right, I need to help more people realize the advantages and the benefits of not drinking. Now, what happened was initially I was standing out in Piccadilly Circus going, hey, everyone, guess what? You should stop drinking. It's amazing, fantastic. And everyone went, shut up and go to the pub.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, being evangelical doesn't really work either. Nobody wants to hear that story. So I was like, how do we convince more people to experience the benefits of taking a break from alcohol? I know. Let's create a challenge. Let's make it something cool, something tough, something, you can go to as a man and be like in the pub going, I'm doing this tough challenge, like Tough Mudder, and it's really cool. And it would kind of like evaporate that peer pressure, break through it, give people the chance to experience the benefits themselves. And hey presto, launched 1 Year No Beer. So that's kind of the whistle stop story about how that all came about.
Wow. Okay. I have so many questions about that. The first one being like, tell me a little bit more about the scratching, because if all of your colleagues are saying, why would you consider not drinking?
Scratching. No, I'm kidding.
If all of your colleagues are saying, no, you should drink more, and if your boss said that's career suicide and you're having so much fun, I feel like it would be so easy to ignore that scratching unless there was something really serious happening.
Yes, exactly. I think this is the thing, is what is somebody's serious? And I think a lot of people are sitting there with outcomes from drinking, but normalizing and belittling them. And that's kind of where I was. So where I was pretty low. I was in a job that I made an absolute bucket ton of money, but I was miserable. I had the car and the house and the wife and all of those wonderful things from the outside. But I just didn't feel like I was firing on all cylinders. I had IBS, and I'd had IBS for a long time, but I thought that was, IBS. And that's just what it was from stress and all of those things. I had, I'd be very, very low some days, really, really low. And I'd been low and up and down in my life before, so this was nothing new. I just didn't put it all together. I had a lot of arguments with my wife. I mean, occasionally coming home at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday is not very conducive to a successful marriage, especially if one time she opens the door and finds you asleep on the doorstep because you can't find your house keys. But in terms of the industry I worked in, that was just normal. That was just like, good lad. I mean, wow, amazing. I mean, I remember sleeping in the disabled toilet sometimes so I could get straight back to work and I didn't have to go home. I remember often taking the pub instead of the train and messaging to say, it's delayed. Why do I want to go home to that nag if I can stay in the pub and have some beers with the boys? And I never had a problem. I wasn't waking up in the morning pouring whiskey in my cornflakes. I could easily stop for a week or two. It wasn't like that at all. But alcohol was definitely causing me problems. And I think in the beginning, I didn't really associate the things that were going on in my life with alcohol. And I think that's where most people are. I think most people would like to lose some weight, but I don't think they're directly attributing it to alcohol. I think most people feel anxiety. I think a lot of people are depressed. I know that 1 in 3 people, they're saying, are on antidepressants. Well, many, many more people are regularly consuming one of the world's most powerful depressants. And do you know why? It's not just depressant for its substance taking, but we now know that sleep deprivation is a significant depressant. In fact, sleep deprivation is a source of significant mental health illness and at the extreme end, death. right? Well, alcohol causes sleep deprivation. Alcohol robs us of deep sleep and REM sleep. But then also, we don't exercise after drinking. And so because you don't exercise, and you don't exercise often, we now know that not only is exercise a very significant antidepressant, but not exercising is a significant depressant. So these are the things that people are not matching up in and doing the math. Like, I don't feel good. I don't feel like I'm being at my best self. I feel like I'm operating at 50% some days. I ask some people and I say, you know, when you come in on Monday after a heavy weekend, that what if you crushing it, smashing it out of the park, absolutely nailing your life, the best version of yourself you've ever experienced, if that's 100%, then what percentage of you is showing up? Now I get ranges from 1% to 80%. 80% is the highest. And then honestly, I think the people who say 80% of kidding themselves is the truth. So I think that the conversation, all of the conversation is that people are not doing the math, that alcohol is actually causing these issues over here. And the reality is the only way you figure it out is not some bold guy on a podcast, right, telling you that you need to figure it out. The only way you figuring it out is by you giving it a shot yourself. And if you taking a break from alcohol has a significant positive impact on your mental health, on your physical health, on your life, then I think you found your answer.
Right. And I love that you said, you were like, how can I make this cool? Because that was one of the biggest barriers that you faced. Yeah. And the evangelical does not work. And so you're like, and it's interesting because it's kind of like 75 Hard. Do you know about 75 Hard?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Hugely popular because it's big macho challenge. And so you wanted to translate that to not having alcohol. So, but why do you think, doing a challenge is cool? But if anyone says like, oh no, I'm not drinking, or I don't drink, then they're kind of either boring or they're like an alcoholic that had a big, deep, troubled past. Why do you think we need this to be like a big macho challenge to accept people to just not be drinking?
Yeah, I know. It is crazy. Why does an organization like me need to exist where the peer pressure is so great? I mean, we did the research with Stirling University and it showed how endemic peer pressure is. 84% of people had experienced bullying from friends to drink alcohol. In fact, the highest peer pressure across any demographic and geographic in the UK was professional women 40 plus in London by their bosses. That was the highest level of peer pressure. Yeah, right. You can look at the study from Stirling University. So what's happened is that alcohol started off as a social elixir, this thing that would help being socially, and occasionally people went down to the pub, all that time, well, not the pub, whatever it was, drinking mead and things back then, and we connected on it. And much like all of the things that are prevalent in our society, the big companies got a hold of it and it became about marketing. And over decades and decades and decades of marketing, it became associated to more and more and more times, events, things, places. Alcohol is sexy. Alcohol is fun. Mummy wine time, sporting events, etc., etc., etc. Now, it becomes so ingrained in society over decades that we do our own marketing. And you know that now because when you say to somebody, oh, should we meet up for that already says alcohol in it, even though it's shall we meet up for they haven't said anything yet. 99 times out of 100, your subconscious thinks about alcohol. It's so deeply ingrained, even in the nuances of what we do. So I think the main, the proponent in there is this element of peer pressure and social thing. And that comes from our innate tribalism. As human beings, we need to belong to a tribe. It's very important to us. And what happens when most people try and take a break from alcohol is they actually leave the tribe. They're saying, oh, I'm going to go over here and leave the tribe. And look at the defensiveness that creates. Oh my God, who are you? And you're not part of the tribe anymore and blah, 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 blah. And so that inevitably, and what we now know is in reality, people go and take a break from alcohol. They avoid their social circle. They cancel going out, right? They sit at home thinking it's boring. What they're doing is they're becoming more disconnected. Now, as a human being, unless you're a sociopath, you can't be disconnected. So it always brings people back to the fold, because the only way for them to feel connected is to go back to the group of people who are drinking. And this is why that yo-yoing of abstinence, not dry January, not blah, 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 is like, all I'm doing there is proving that January is fucking miserable and I hate it, and my life is so much better with alcohol. And what's the point of that? Like, what we really need to do is go through a process of retraining ourselves on all the bullshit marketing, social conditioning that we've had for decades, that alcohol is the best thing since sliced bread, that it brings us all of these things, and actually just sit there and be curious and question all of that. Does it? Alcohol is so much fun. Is it? Is it the fun that you enjoyed of being with those friends and enjoying that moment and having the crack? Or is it, actually that substance which then caused issues and made you feel like horrible the next day? There's one tiny thing I want to touch into here, and it's about how dopamine works in the brain. So we know, right, for dopamine, that our brain is always focused on homeostasis. Okay, so the dopamine works on pleasure and pain. And with alcohol, as an example, we get a 15-minute spike of dopamine high, this amazing pleasure that we absolutely love and go for. But because of the way our brain works, it will immediately wrestle back into homeostasis. So it actually forces us down into pain. But the problem is that then recorrection takes a long time for it to fix. So we get a 15-minute high and a long tail of being in pain, which is the hangover. And the more you drink, the higher you make that mountain in the beginning, the worse that pain is afterwards. Okay? Now, that's when you bring on alcohol. If you use things like cold showers or exercise, they're the opposite. Right? That releases dopamine because you go shooting down into pain. It's actually not pleasurable. And then you have a long tail of feeling good after it. So it's actually the direct counter of going into here. And I think this is the journey we should be going on, is not just in search of not drinking, not just in search of breaking it, but for actually fundamentally changing the neural pathways in our brain that we've built up over decades. And when you do that, that's when you get a better relationship with alcohol, if it exists at all.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for talking about the dopamine, because I was going to ask you about that. I had a guest on here who's the author of Calm Your Mind, and he talks about going on a dopamine fast. And so thank you for explaining the role of dopamine. And you mentioned earlier that you have ADHD. Do you think that for people with ADHD, those kind of swings are more exaggerated, and therefore we are more likely to crave these things that will give us the easy hit?
Exactly. So I always can explain it like this. Imagine, those little plastic toy cars you get that have got a little plastic dynamo in them. You push it and it shoots across the room further than you pushed it, right? So it builds up that kinetic energy. And everyone's central nervous system is like that. But with ADHD, you have a geared dynamo. So you just lightly push it and it poof, shoots across the room. Okay. So what we do is we wake up in the morning and we start to wind our central nervous system up. Okay. Now, as you wind it up and, things can impact that. So the food we eat is stressful in our central nervous system. The daily stress that we have, financial stress, all of these kind of things, psychological stress, but also the work stress and everything else. So we wind this thing up, we wind it up, we wind it up, we wind it up, we wind it up all day. And then we get to the end of our day and we put the car down expecting it to relax, and it goes shooting off into the distance.
Right.
And that's this very, very busy, hyperactive brain. And you're like, I can't switch off. I can't sleep. So alcohol is the most readily available tool. And gosh, it is effective. It is the most effective tool at switching off that noise and allowing you to just calm down, except it isn't calming your central nervous system. It's doing completely the opposite. If you look at the data of what's happening inside your system, and we use one of the world's most accurate heart rate variability monitors to show this to participants in our program, that actually it's basically like giving your body the flu. Your heart rate shoots up. You are now working to process 100% poison. If your body, your system does not process the ethanol out, you will die. Right. So it's got to process this, and it's very, very, very costly for it. Now, we might use that to switch off our brain and think we go to sleep, but our central nervous system is working overdrive. You now don't get good sleep for night. It's restless. You don't sleep as well. You think you've got more hours, but really you haven't got that deep restorative sleep. guess what? Your ability to deal with stress the next day is now diminished more. And therefore, you go through a light amount of winding up this central nervous system again, and you needing a drink again at the end of the day is a foregone conclusion. And that is what alcohol does. Most drugs beget themselves, which means that the thing that you take them for, because you think it's going to help you sleep, it actually creates the issue in the first place. And the same thing with stress. You are using alcohol because you need to unwind from stress, but alcohol attacks your stress coping mechanisms. It makes you feel overwhelmed quicker. It makes you unable to deal with that stress. So guess what? You need a drink again. So it is a very insidious element like that.
Yeah, I think you and I have a common friend, Annie Grace, and I think a quote from her is, everything you think alcohol is giving you, it's actually taking away.
Exactly.
And I wanted to ask you about one of those, though, because when I look at I've got a list here of reasons that people say, this is why I need a drink. So it doesn't help you unwind. It doesn't help you sleep. You've covered those two. But what about that necessity to be part of the herd? Because I think a lot of people will say alcohol helps me be social, outgoing. There's no way I could do the office karaoke without being a bit smashed. So what about that?
So there's quite a lot of things in there, because the Dutch courage is really big for people. But I think that, in essence, it does for that moment, but it has a long tail of stealing it from you, just like everything else, because alcohol is a depressant. It's going to make you feel more anxious. It's going to feel you more lower about this. So the long tail of, you might take it for that instant confidence, but then for 3 to 5 days, you're actually going to be psychologically a little bit less confident, a little bit less happy. And if the long tail is 3-5 days, maybe even longer of that psychological impact, depending on you, and you're drinking regularly, you actually don't realize that you're down here. That the reason why you feel like you can't be yourself is because you're regularly drinking alcohol, and it's holding you down like that. Now, there's something else that's really important here, is that Is it normal? So first of all, are you an introvert? Now, lots and lots and lots of people are introverted and using alcohol to try and fit in, right? But the truth is, you're an introvert. You don't actually want to go and be that person. You don't actually get your energy from groups of people. In fact, far from it, it depletes your energy. So instead of forcing yourself to behave in this way, maybe you need to actually learn a bit more about yourself and be like, that's actually not where I get my energy from, even though I'm using alcohol to try and put me into that place. On the other side of it, maybe you're an extrovert. Well, if you're like me, I don't need alcohol. And when I realized I didn't need alcohol, that I could still be at a stag do, shouting shots at 6:30 in the morning in a German tech house and not having touched a drop of drugs or alcohol, or be half naked dancing on a table, because I didn't need it. I was super extroverted. I just needed to allow me to be myself. I actually made it my mission in the first year of going alcohol free to say, not for 1 second, not for one moment is ever anyone going to say to me, I'm boring now, I not drink. In fact, I want people to say, are you sure you're not drinking? Because then I know I'm hitting the bar of what I want. So I think there's two different things here, right? If you're introverted, why stay to when people are babbling the same rubbish over and over again? Book your taxi for 10, go home, enjoy the morning, read a book, like top up your energy. If you're extroverted, you don't need alcohol. What you need is more self-belief, self-confidence, self-worth to be yourself. And this is a life skill. Why are you using a drug to create a fake version when really what you need to do is a little bit of work on yourself so that you feel more confident and you can be more of yourself in public? And what we've touched on to there is something really important, right? So of the major drivers of compulsion, which we use in our complete control program, we help people with data and evidence to understand exactly what's driving the underlying behavior. The number one is our past experiences as a child. So I'm just going to go a bit deeper into this one. So what happens is between 0 and 7, and 0 is literally from pregnancy, right? Where you are not conscious, you're in your mum's womb, right? And even possibly before, if we look at inherited family trauma and generational trauma and things like that, okay? Is that from 0 to 7, we have not yet developed a prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the area of brain just behind your forehead, and we use that for rational decision making. We also use it for an awful lot of other things, but understanding the world, understanding the space around us, understanding where we fit into the world, etc. So today, when somebody shouts at you, you go, oh, that's an idiot who hasn't slept well. Depending on how stressed out you are, you might just punch him in the face, but then you need to meditate. So, but then as a child, you don't understand. So when you're left alone to cry it out, when you're denied love by a family member, when you're shouted at, all of these things happen, right? We're talking about starting to understand the truth here that a young girl who goes up to her dad wearing a little pink tutu that she's just received, super excited, and dad is busy and not paying attention. And he says, "Oh, you look a bit fat in it." And all of a sudden she has an eating disorder for the rest of her life. And if that is the significance of the moment, then we've all given our children these traumatic feelings. And that is the truth, right? It's not about whether you had a traumatic childhood. It's the fact that childhood is traumatic, okay? It's the fact that during childhood, we perceive some moments where we feel emotions that we cannot rationalize. And those emotions get packed down. Now, we become world class as a species at teaching people to pack down emotions. Come on, get yourself up there, be strong, you've got to be, fight, and everything else, right? And then we meet alcohol. Oh, the world's most powerful tool at shutting down emotions. But look at Gabor Mate's research and everything that he's doing. We now understand that not only do these emotions end up being toxic inside of us, they create addiction, they create a compulsion, right? That desire to numb out and take the edge off. But they're also the vast majority of the creation for autoimmune diseases and disorders, mental health illnesses, dementia, Alzheimer's, cancers, direct result of unprocessed childhood trauma / these emotions that are rotting inside of us. So when I speak to people and they say, oh, I'd like to drink less alcohol and, I want to come on the program to drink less alcohol, I'm like, okay, that's 1% of what we will achieve. We're a preventative health company. And that means that, yeah, you might feel like alcohol is showing up for you a bit prevalently. But the reality is the things that underlying that are driving that, when we change those, it's going to have a profound impact on almost every area of your life. I want to give a tiny example because this is a lady who a month before coming on the program, and this just happened, it's the 20th today, so 6 days ago, a month before coming on the program, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And she came in because they're like, you have to clean up diet, all of those things, right? It's a significant autoimmune disease. She posted in on Valentine's Day. I had to share this. Do you know what this means? And there are other tests as well showing the same. All of this work I have put into complete control, the trauma, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, with all of your support, has pulled back my autoimmune and in brackets disease back into normal range. Happy Valentine's Day from the bottom of my heart. And here is an image I'm going to show you right now. On September the 27th, positive, abnormal. On February the 12th, negative.
Wow.
Okay? Now, this is the significance of doing the work. And we have a healthcare system right now, which is totally, totally broken, especially in the US. It's not for health. It's for profit. It's for pharmaceuticals, right? And that the reality is, the more research and studying we're doing into trauma, childhood emotions, and the impact of these emotions unfelt, the more we're understanding that this is a major source of ill health, coupled with the number 2 thing that we talk about, which is stress. And we are chronically stressed. And most of us are not doing the things to mitigate our stress. In fact, the opposite. If you're drinking alcohol, you are significantly diminishing your ability to deal with stress. Here's one thing I love to say to people. Alcohol produces cortisol, which sends us into fight or flight. Okay. But we now know that alcohol increases cortisol production over time. That means regular cortisol production over time is going to continually bring down your ability to deal with stress. And if you wind that forward, that means you're going to be stressed out by sound, by light, by crowds of people. The smallest things will stress you out. So looking forward, like if you are regularly consuming alcohol, do you really want to continue debilitating your ability to deal with stress? I don't know about you, Oognah, right? But I'm trying to build something amazing. You're trying to build something amazing. Do you want something that is taking away from that in your life? And if you do, how often do you want to bring it in? Not very often, right?
Yeah. Well, right now, when I Google you, the quote that comes up all the time is alcohol is holding you back. And
That's it.
you've explained a million reasons why that's true. But what I think a lot of people listening might be wondering, yeah, but what about for me? Because I only drink like, a glass or two of wine a week. Surely that's not doing anything. Can you answer that?
Yeah. Yeah, I can. And again, I think that first of all, the first thing is just removing that on its own will have a significant impact on you, right? And if it's that easy, why not give it a shot? I always have this thing now, if you feel like you need something, then you should try doing without it. Because I think in there, you're going to find massive amounts of growth. And so if you feel like you are relying on something, and this goes for coffee and various things, don't worry, we'll get onto caffeine later. We don't want to rush everyone. So I think that's the first thing there. The second thing is that a lot of people, I have people, all walks of life, all types of drinkers, light drinkers, social drinkers, binge drinkers, heavy drinkers, daily drinkers, coming into our program. And what we're saying is, I often say to people, look, I don't care if you drink. I don't care if you drink during the program. That is irrelevant. It's not relevant to the work that we are doing, because I'm going to change how you view this piece. Here's an example. If I said to you, Oognah, look, I will give you £1,000, £10,000. If you, let's say £100,000, let's make it meaningful. I'll give you £100,000 if you can run a 5K under 20 minutes. You could go out and do it, right?
Yeah,
you'd
give it a
go
go.
out and do it. And if you wanted to get it done and guarantee success, you'd probably go and hire a coach. You would probably go and study it and learn all about it. You would get yourself some new kit. You would invest in it. And you would know that no doubt in your mind, you could get there. You could get there. That's in your mind. That is what I'm trying to tell you about everyone's relationship with alcohol. It doesn't matter how toxic you think it is. I'm telling you that you can have a take it or leave it relationship with alcohol. The question mark is, what is the work for you to do, right? If you are severely obese, right, and I'm telling you to go and run a 5K under 20, well, that's going to be a big journey, right? There's a lot of discovery and time taken over that. But this is just about the question for you about where you are with your relationship with alcohol. And I think, again, going through this part of the process with people. So first of all, changing the dynamic, instead of it being, is it abstinence? Isn't it? Is all those things? It's just, hey, this is a personal development journey. Every step we go forward, making those improvements is a step towards that destination that you want to hit. And I think the next bit is really, what we help people see, first of all, is that there's a huge amount of self-sabotage for most people, right? And they are self-sabotaging using alcohol. It's a way of keeping themselves down. They don't even realize it, right? Is that they feel incongruent. They feel like their life is not as great as they want it to be. They're not quite there. That's a very difficult feeling to sit with. Do you know why that's a difficult feeling to sit with, right? Not being your best version. Because it reminds you that you're not good enough. And that's the feeling you felt as a child. Now, the feelings we feel as a child are deep inside us. They are so overwhelming because they were overwhelming for us as a child. So in that moment of not feeling like we're operating good enough, we're overwhelmed by that past feeling, and then we need to numb out with alcohol. But actually, when we take the opposite direction and say, well, what is it for you to create the best version of yourself? What is it when you feel like you're really crushing it? You're aligned for meaning and purpose. You are doing the things that you feel are contributing in a very significant way. You're challenged, you're enjoying it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then when you are living in that version, most of the time you'll choose not to drink. In fact, the journey is simple, okay? Is that when you really see truthfully what it is, like at your core, you, Oognah, as an example, or you, the listener out there, at your core of who you believe you are, what you want to have as an impact in the world, the legacy that you want to live, the business that you want to build, the mum that you want to be, the partner that you want to be, the longevity you want to have in your life, the running around in the garden with your grandkids health that you want to have, the peak performance that you're trying to find in your life. Everything that you want is actually being taken away by alcohol. And that's the truth. It is. It is not contributing to that journey at all. And when you see that truthfully from inside your core, most of the time you'll choose not to drink, because these other things are way more important. Contribution, significance, drive, my freaking children and being present for them and having an amazing, present, wonderful father, amazing relationship with my wife, all of those things. Make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And I just wanted to pick up on something that you said earlier, that you can help anyone, whether daily drinking or drinking not that frequently, have a take it or leave it relationship with alcohol. Now, is that the ultimate promise, or is it abstinence in a new sober life that you love? Like, tell me about the distinction there.
I think this is really important. Thank you, because I've been, for the last previous, up until 2 years ago, I was very focused on helping people take a break from drinking. And I did a year alcohol free, and then I went to have a drink, and it wasn't one, it was lots. And then I've seen literally tens of thousands of people. I mean, we've helped hundreds of thousands of people all over the world take a break, sometimes 6 months, sometimes a year, and then go back to drinking how they were before, and sometimes worse. And that's what drove me nuts. I was like, we need to help people in a more significant way, because it looks like abstinence is not the answer. Now, if you look at that, if you look at basic behavioral research, abstinence is not the answer. Aversion therapy doesn't work. Don't think of a pink elephant. Oh, well, that worked, right? Trying to avoid something actually makes it even worse. It drives the desire even more. So if we go purely in search of abstinence, like, hey, I think abstinence is the solution for me, and we don't do any of the work, then we are probably creating a more significant relationship with alcohol. And this is what happens to lots of people. And they do more abstinence, and they do more abstinence, and they do more abstinence. And then they go, okay, I can't moderate. I have to not drink. And they get to a place where they're like, if I drink, the wheels come off and I fuck my life up. And Oognah, with every fiber of my core, I keep getting that the wrong way around, I believe that's wrong. I believe that's unhelpful for people. And I know that we can help people have a better relationship with that. I'm not going to say healthy, because that's not true. There's no healthy relationship with 100% toxic poison, which is what it is. It just happens to be the most readily available, mostly marketed toxic poison available to us. In fact, the example is, imagine putting a whole bunch of toddlers in a sweet shop, having floor-to-ceiling sweets, having videos with marketing with kids drooling, eating sweets, and saying to the kids, don't eat the sweets, kids. And that's our relationship with alcohol. And that's almost what sobriety, like trying for many people to be sobriety, can be like. And it's like, no, this is not right. If we address these underlying factors and we help people with it, then the compulsion is significantly diminished. And that allows them to be in a place where they can control their relationship with alcohol. There's a few factors. So first of all, we have to understand what those drivers are. And we've touched on many of those and what we help people with. And then once we have helped them move those drivers out of significantly issues. So let's say we find significant childhood trauma. Let's say we find massive amounts of stress, which we all have a lot of stress, but they're not really doing the things to mitigate their stress. And we can introduce simple tools in our day to mitigate our stress. Again, we use an incredible device. It's either bright red when people come into the program, and then it lights up green when they get into nice parasympathetic. And it's very, very compelling for people. Like, wow, look at that. So let's say we go through that process. Once we've found and discovered what's significantly driving them, and we've coached somebody through a process of making those changes, then we need to go and learn how to control our drinking. Now, just like how we learned how to drink alcohol, which is by repetition, by seeing, right, which is how our brain operates. It constantly puts on autopilot what we repeatedly do. We have to do the same with controlling drinking. So what does that look like? Well, if your decision is to be, right, I've dealt with the drivers and now I'm going to teach myself to control, I need to go and set up some moments and examples of when I'm guaranteed control. So I'm going to have half a whiskey at Monday on 10 o'clock in the morning. Now, A, I don't really like whiskey. B, I would never normally drink at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'm guaranteed to prove to myself that I have control, because I'm not really going to finish it. In fact, I'm not going to like it. Great. I have control of my drinking. That's a positive step forward. In neuroscience terms, I have started building neural pathways around that. Next, I want a more complex thing. And by the way, this builds up. I'm going to go without my friends, who I usually do, but I'm going to guarantee that I come back from that and I've controlled my drinking. I'm going to make sure I've got an accountability partner. I'm going to warn them this is what I'm doing. I'm going to go there for 2 drinks. Then I'm going to swap to alcohol-free drinks, and I'm going to come home. And I'm going to make that 100% successful with the purpose of building the neural pathways. I had a great time. I really enjoyed it. I controlled my drinking. I'm in control. And that's how we learn how to control our drinking. And I think coming on to more about, you said anyone. Again, think about the super obese person getting to a 5K. We've got our challenge cut out for us. If you're homeless on the street, drinking spirits for breakfast and all day, every day, it's going to be a very significant challenge. I'm not even sure if we could get you there, if we could radically change it. But if we could change your environment, if we could get you connected to meaning and purpose, if we could help deal with your childhood trauma, which we can help process, if we could help deal with stresses and things like that, if we could teach you emotional regulation and stress resilience tools, could we get you to a place where take it or leave it relationship? Yeah, it's happened for hundreds of thousands, millions of homeless people all over the world. Fact, I said this on a podcast recently, some amazing research. The world's most powerful intervention for getting people from problematic drinking to drinking in control, which happens for millions of people all over the world. Do you know what that intervention is?
No.
It's not AA, which is abstinence-based, just in case you were wondering. It's time.
Time.
Most people grow out of alcohol use disorder over time.
Huh. Without any sort of support or structure or...
I mean, this is the masses, but there's a way, way, way more people who have alcohol use disorder in their teens and 20s and 30s who then reduce down their drinking to a more sensible drinking. What were the interventions? Life, stress, family, kids, reading books, wanting to be better, peak performance, optimal health. But yeah, millions and millions of people all over the world achieve it all the time. It's just time. So it's not a question of whether it's possible. We already know it is.
So what about the term alcoholism, understood as a chronic disease? Do you think that that serves us, or does it create too much of a binary? You're either an alcoholic or you're fine. There's like no room in the middle for alcohol's not really doing any of us any favors.
There's no such word. So alcoholism is defunct from the scientific dictionary. I'm in the world's largest alcohol addiction group. We are abolishing the brain disease model when it comes to alcoholism. There are no such things as alcoholics, and sorry, alcoholism is the wrong word. The word we use is alcohol use disorder, and severity of alcohol use disorder. And that is a sliding scale for people when they are defined by having alcohol use disorder. And it's something that you can recover from, and it's something that you can get rid of.
Wow. So instead you like language about habits. And really about interrupting a habit loop that isn't serving you, rather than saying you are an addict, you need to whatever.
Well, addiction is a fair word. That's fair play, right? And you can see addiction, and addiction again is a sliding scale. I mean, we're talking about addiction. Addiction, the very definition of addiction is a behavior we repeatedly do, even though we know it hurts us. I mean, we're all addicted to social media. We're all addicted to our phones. We're all addicts. In varying scales of it. And so those are totally acceptable words. But when it comes to alcohol, the thing that was very much driven by AA is this idea that there is a disease, and that once you have that disease, you have it for the rest of your life. And that's just not true. The scientific community is not backing that science any longer. Now, there's lots of people out there whose entire sobriety is based on that, and based on staying there, and they should protect that. I would have the utmost respect for people who are in AA, who are sober for many years. Look, this is 100% toxic poison. Okay. Why do you want to consume 100% toxic poison ever? Right? It's significantly detrimental to our brain, our body. There is no good from alcohol. And yet it's one of the world's most prevalent drugs that is super steeped in social. I've been stood around a bunch of guys who were looking forward to their cricket competition. And I heard them say, we really want to win this year. And the other guy's like, yeah, I know. Maybe we should invite Paul. He is the best player. And another guy's, yeah, he is the best player. But he doesn't drink. Yeah, no, let's not invite him. So they would rather lose the cricket competition than bring somebody who doesn't drink. Okay. So that's the world we live in. Yeah. And so as long as that exists, people will want to drink. And if the only solution is you must be sober, and that when they do drink it, the wheels come off and it causes major issue, then we're not helping people. And so that's why I think it's really important to have this conversation about, hey, why not just drink a little bit less? Why not go on the journey of what it is to drink a little bit less? It's 2024. It's the beginning of, why don't we make this year that you drink a little bit less? And if you find that difficult, then why not just reach out for a little bit of support? Because there are wonderful programs like what we do that will help you reset your relationship with alcohol.
Well, Ruari, can you tell us a little bit about that? I'm sure there's so many people who are really recognizing the truth in what you're saying and would love to learn more about what you do. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Well, we have lots of different programs to support all sorts of things. So if you're just thinking about taking a break from alcohol, we have our wonderful challenges, which will help you take a break for a little period. But the reality is, for everything we are doing now, it's moving towards a program called Complete Control. Complete Control is designed to help people go deep into the underlying causes of what drives compulsive behavior. And this means that instead of just going in search of abstinence of alcohol, which lots of people do, and then all they do is pick up Netflix or binge watching social media or work addiction or cake or sugar because they haven't really addressed the underlying causes, we go and change those underlying drivers of compulsive behavior. In our top program, Complete Control, we use some really cool technology. We remotely monitor your central nervous system. We help you understand how stressed out you are and help you mitigate that stress. And then we just teach you the skills, life skills, right, of how to mitigate a higher level of stress. I had a guy who came through the program who runs a $500 million turnover business, a cybersecurity business. And he said, Ruari, I don't think I've ever had so many fires in my business, and I don't think I've ever been less stressed. And I say to people who think about coming on the program, I know you want to deal with your relationship with alcohol, but if I turn you into a stress eating machine, what impact is that going to have on your life over the next 5 to 10 years? And most people who are regularly consuming alcohol, you are operating at 25% of the capacity of stress you can manage, because alcohol is so detrimental to your stress coping mechanisms. You're stressed out because you're drinking. I'm sorry, that is the fact. Then, obviously looking at people's childhood trauma. I mean, I talked about somebody there who's pulled back an autoimmune disease diagnosis. There are so many conversations like that. The past experiences that you are running away from, that you are packing down, that you are using alcohol to numb out those feelings, they're more toxic than the alcohol itself. And they will continue to rot inside you, even if you do change your relationship with alcohol. And this is the importance of doing the work. And the one thing I say to people is, I spent 30 years in talk therapy, and we don't use traditional tools because it didn't change me that much. So we use some of the latest coaching methodologies to help people release emotion, things like somatic experiencing, which is predominantly focused on dealing with the emotion, not the context, not what you are talking about, not the brain. It's inside your body. These emotions are trapped in there, and we need to get in there. And, teaching people how to regulate the vagus nerve, polyvagal theory, all of those things. It's just absolutely fascinating. So in a nutshell, we take people on a journey using technology, data, and evidence to understand with clarity what is driving the behavior. And then we coach them through a process of making that change so that they can have a take it or leave it relationship with alcohol. I can think of one guy, I just got to mention him now, Don. Because I've two people really. I'm going to two extremes. Kevin comes on the program 3 times to the Priory, 3 times straight back to where he was within weeks. I mean, I think an organization should be struck off if that's what they do. But anyway, he's drinking 3 bottles of wine a day and then sometimes gets onto the vodka. Very heavy drinker, probably too far on the edge for our program, but there is no line. The question mark is, do they have the resources? Do they have the capacity to go all in? Are they willing to change? Are they coachable? Right? And if they are willing to do those things, then maybe this can work for them. So he comes on the program. A year after going on the program, he comes out here to take my wife and I out to dinner to thank us. And he sits and he has half a glass of wine. And he says, most of the time I just choose not to drink. I just don't want to drink. But when I do drink, I never finish the glass because I'm always proving I have control. So there are people out there who would tell you what I've just said is impossible. And this is why I think the system is broken and it needs new thinking. The second one is Don. Don is amazing, ex-pro NFL athlete, mega performer, large private equity business in the US, 12 times Ironman champ. This guy's an absolute machine. He's like, look, Ruari, I've done a year before. In fact, I've done 2 years before alcohol free. That's easy. I can do that. No problem. But when I have a drink, it's like I've won the Super Bowl and I disappear for 3 days. And I can't afford that on my family, on my life, on my big business. I just don't know what's going to happen. And he was like, can you help me with the binge? And I'm like, yep, we can help you with the binge. And he was like, I don't believe you. And he took a long time to come on the journey with us. finally, he comes on the journey with us. 6 months after the program, he sends me this message. A big trigger for him is always with his brothers. And he went away for his weekend with all the extended family. He drank like 5 beers on one night just with his brothers, enjoying it, cut it off after that, had an amazing time. And he sent me this wonderful story. But just the last weekend, it was the Super Bowl. He actually messaged me on Saturday night and he sent me a picture. He sent me a picture of him basically eating a salad and drinking a glass of water and a Guinness Zero with day 3 in Vegas for the Super Bowl. What the fuck have you done to me? And he would just say to me that would have been impossible for him to go to the Super Bowl, be around all those pro athletes that he used to hang out with and choose not to drink. But what he saw, just to turn it in an essence, is during the program, we helped him align that the most important thing to him in the whole wide world was his relationship with his daughter. There was nothing more important to him than that. And when he got really deeply aligned into that, actually 3 months into the program, he got a message out the blue from his daughter going, "Daddy, you're my hero." And he's posted it into the community and was like, "This is the first time she said that to me. So I know that I must be doing the right work." And he saved it as his screenshot. And now every time he thinks about going down that dark place or wheel going off, that is there for him. And this is the significance of connecting with people at their core, because so many of us are just drinking out of bad reason, excuse, social conditioning. We're not really thinking intentionally about it. And because we're not living how we want to live, it drives us to want to drink again. And I think when we get clear of who we are in our core, most of the time we choose not to drink.
Mm-hmm. It's like the examples you gave earlier about the introvert honoring themselves and just going home, and the extrovert honoring themselves and getting up and doing the table dance totally sober. It's about becoming more of yourself.
Exactly.
Ruari, this conversation has been so great. I appreciate you so much with all these stories and all these different ways of thinking about alcohol. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me on the show. And if anybody, I'm super responsive on social media. Don't tell my family. So you can find me Fairbairns Instagram, Ruari Fairbairns Facebook. Please do reach out if I can be helpful or support you in any way. I'd be very, very happy to. If you want to check out our various programs, you can go to oneyearnobeer.com. It will signpost you to the right kind of programs depending on where you're at and what's going on for you at the moment. And if you want to check out Complete Control, you can see it on the top of the website there. It is a game-changing program, and I'm super excited about the direction and future of what we've got going on. So thank you so much for helping me share this message. As you can see, I'm super passionate about helping people just think about drinking a little bit less. And I think it's that simple. Let's just start with that.
Awesome. We're going to leave links for all of that in the show notes. And I think Ruari also has a podcast, is right?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll leave the link for that too. Awesome. I know people are going to want to hear more from you. And thank you so much for sharing this message. We felt your heart the whole time.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Oognah.
Wow. That interview actually exceeded all expectations. Now, here are some of my takeaway moments. I thought it was so interesting that women in their 40s are most likely to experience peer pressure to drink from their bosses. How gross is that? I really liked the example of how we regulate dopamine. And although we get this dopamine hit for about 15 minutes when we drink, then we regulate with a dopamine deficit, which I understood, but I've never before thought about exercise and cold plunging being the opposite, where you endure something that's kind of unpleasant and then you regulate at a higher level of dopamine. I thought that was really cool. Also, how he was saying that people aren't necessarily connecting the dots, that their excess weight, their gastrointestinal issues, their anxiety, or their depression could be not like inherent traits that they just have to deal with, but alcohol. And I got so much from this interview, but I really want to hear what hit you the most. So send me a message on Instagram at Oognah Duncan and let me know what you thought of this show. All right, until next week. Hey dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Oognah Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.